Hey guys, it's your old pal Tony Giles TG here, back with another episode of The Record Room. And on this week's episode, I'm kind of back to normal. It's normal business and I'll be doing a little bit of everything. I've got some new albums and I've even got a couple of cassettes and a sneaky 7-inch as well. So I'm going to kick things off with a record I've been listening to quite a lot recently. This only came out about, I want to say a week or 2 weeks ago now, but ever since it arrived, I've kind of been rinsing it. It's become a daily listen. It looks good, sounds good, and this is This Train I Ride by Warren Ellis. Now, I'm sure a bunch of you out there already know who Warren Ellis is, but for those of you that don't, Warren Ellis is one of the Bad Seeds with Nick Cave, and he is Nick's kind of primary go-to person. He's the person that Nick Cave composes a lot of film scores with. And this record is a solo effort from Warren, but this is just a really exceptional score. It's quite strange in that everything on here was composed, or mostly composed, on train journeys. So Warren Ellis essentially created this entire score using his laptop whilst on trains, which, I mean, it blows my mind, because listening to this, I just think, how did a person do this on a train? That in itself is mind blowing. But this is actually a film score. The film is by Arno Bishi, I think is how you say it, and it's about I think it's about young women taking train rides. I've not actually seen the film yet, but the music, this is absolutely fantastic. It's more along the lines of ambient tonal sounds. You know, if you're a fan of Brian Eno, you will definitely enjoy this record. But I mean, I'm a huge Nick Cave fan. I've spoken about Nick Cave before, and Warren Ellis, definitely. You can't really kind of talk about one without talking about the other these days. And this is simply marvelous. I'd recommend this to anybody. It's kind of the perfect soundtrack for the times we're in right now. It's not invasive, it's not abrasive, it's nice. It's just, I put it on and I'm really relaxed, and I just kind of, I think to myself, you know, what must it be like, you know, hopping trains or even composing this on a train, you know, and in between each track there is some dialogue as well. So it kind of almost tells you a narrative story as you're going along. So big fan of that. And obviously this is excellent packaging as per usual from the guys at Invader. It's a single disc, but it still comes on a gatefold, or comes in a gatefold, I should say. I say on gatefold, what I mean is it comes in a gatefold, but you can see there this really nice sleeve, and this is a nice thick sleeve as well. This is actually the web shop exclusive, which is a different color. So this is the inner sleeve. And again, this itself is really thick. And you get some liner notes on here from Warren Ellis and Brian Eno as well. So this is everything about this package is incredible. On that side, that's where the liner notes are, and you get some information about the tracks there. But the record itself, it comes on this gorgeous, I think they class it as pink marble, but it's this kind of trans pink with some marbling or smoke effect running through it. And it really sets the package off. You know, looking at the whole thing together, I was kind of like, ooh. I'm intrigued before I've even dropped the needle, and I hadn't heard the music before I'd actually dropped the needle. So it was a really nice surprise. I'm kind of predisposed to like Warren anyway, but genuinely, I am such a fan of this record. I'm really kind of, I might be going a little bit OTT, but this really is my favorite listen right now. This, along with Mixing Colors by Roger and Brian Eno, two of my favorite records of the year so far, and they're both kind of really tonal and really ambient. So this one is available as well on digital platforms. So if you would like to try before you buy, just search for This Train I Ride by Warren Ellis, and I guarantee you are going to love it. Now, even though that was the soundtrack, and I just did a soundtrack episode, the Record Room isn't primarily about soundtracks. I am going to talk about other stuff that I've been listening to a lot, on a record I've been listening to a lot recently, and something I was super excited for its release and the subsequent tour that would have accompanied it, but unfortunately the tour has been put on hold. But I can still jam the record, which is the most important thing, and that is Lucifer 3 by the Mighty Lucifer. And for those of you that might not be familiar with this band, the front person is Joanna Sodonis, who used to be in the band The Oath. And they also have Nick Anderson is the drummer now in Lucifer. I mean, this band are just, they're so good. I've seen them a couple of times live, 2 or 3 times live, and the lineup has been different every time. But this lineup now, I cannot wait to see them. And on Lucifer 3, they've definitely changed their style a bit. I mean, not drastically. The music is still outstanding, but where they started off as kind of more of a, I don't want to say like a cult doom band, but they definitely had more of the horror doom vibe on their first album. They started to transition out of it on their second album, and this third album here, this is just like mid-70s LA fuzz rock. It's so incredibly good. Leather Demon, the track, if you've not heard that one yet, I believe there's a video for it on YouTube. Go and check that one out. It just kicks ass, all the asses. It's so good. So if you like if you like 70s rock, Scorpions, Aerosmith, even some Jefferson Airplane, you will probably dig this. You know, there are some things on here for every kind of rock fan. It's not super heavy to the point of, you know, turning people off. Joanna's voice is also fantastic. She's probably never sounded better, so I'm a big fan of this. This is actually the second copy I bought of this album, because the first copy that arrived, the whole front of the album was just bent. I don't even know how that's possible in this day and age to ruin an album so badly, but I do have a nice crisp copy here, and this is out now on Century Media. And as per Century Media, they never do things by halves. Now, I actually have the regular retail version, which comes on black vinyl, and it's 180 gram black vinyl. And obviously, I love black vinyl, I spoke about it before, but check out these center labels. They are proper old school 70s. They look like 70s vintage rock album labels. And I love the attention to detail that you get with a band like Lucifer. It really does seem like every aspect has kind of ticked a box. You know, this is who we're fans of. This is the kind of thing we're trying to emulate. And it really comes across on this entire package. And I should actually mention that the artwork on the album, the illustration was done by Graham Humphreys, who some of you guys may know he did a slew of VHS covers in the 80s, and he's most recently worked for Death Waltz as well on some of their horror scores. So all around, I'm already like in love with this. You also get an insert, which includes the lyrics on one side, and then a little bit of information on the bottom there. But as this is Century Media, much like with the Body Count album I talked about a couple of episodes ago, you also get the album on CD as well. So wherever you are, whatever you want to do, if you're listening in your record room, you can jam the vinyl, or if you're out in the car or in the office, you can throw on the CD. And speaking of CDs, I actually recently bought a CD player. However, I bought this primarily to go through my old stuff. It's not something I've invested in to buy new CDs, and there's a good chance I'm never going to talk about CDs on the Record Room, because I'm not a huge fan of CDs. Never have been. I probably never will be, but I do have a nice CD player. So I've kind of rounded out my stereo kind of equipment there, and I just thought I'd let you guys know. But Lucifer 3, trust me, if you kind of even have a mild leaning towards rock music, I would highly recommend checking out Lucifer 3 ASAP. Now we're 5 episodes in, and I've barely spoken about the Mighty 45 or 7-inch singles. I know I've talked about 1 or 2 before, but I am a huge fan, always have been, always will be. And unfortunately, you just don't get that many 45s these days. So when I do come across a band or an artist that's doing them, I'm all in on that. And I spoke about this guy on a couple of episodes ago, and I even wore a t-shirt on the last episode, but I have the latest record from Dream Division here. If I'm going OTT on Dream Division, it's because I really want you guys to check him out. He's so cool. But this is the latest release, Escape from Planet Sauvage, and this 7-inch comes on lovely black vinyl. And what this is, it doesn't overly say it, but I'm kind of, gonna throw it out there as the name might suggest. I think this is a nod to the Planet Sauvage soundtrack, which is it Alan Grenier? I think something like that. It's an amazing soundtrack, but this is kind of, it's electronic music, but it's hard for me to describe because there is electronic music I love and there's electronic music that I'm just, it just doesn't do anything for me. And this definitely sits in that camp of electronic music that I'm a big fan of. It's more on the darker side of ambience and electronica, I'd say that. It's not the kind of thing you throw on at a party and it's banging. It's music that takes you on a journey. You can close your eyes and imagine a story, a scenario happening, and this is a brilliant kind of imagined soundtrack for that. And what's cool about this as well, that it came out on 7-inch single, as you can see here, but it also came out on cassette as well. And how cool is this? It's actually a slipcover cassette. So I'm just going to pull this out here. This is, it's Polytechnic Youth this is out on. So you can get this on 7-inch and cassette. I think this is still available now. And it's this nice kind of see-through blue shell, but the shell has actually been printed on as well. And it has the artwork from the 7-inch. On there, which I'm just, again, it's the little things, the little attention to detail. Like if you look at the back of this, it's almost like a film trailer. It gives you a kind of a PG warning of mild peril there. So it's these little things that kind of really do tick a lot of boxes for me. So yeah, Dream Division. If you haven't already checked out Dream Division after my last kind of tirade about how good he was, definitely head on over to his Bandcamp and check out Escape from Planet Sauvage as soon as you can. Now my next pick, this kind of, I bought this, in fact I pre-ordered this before it came out, and when it finally arrived, I did listen to it at the time, but it didn't end up going into regular rotation. I honestly don't know why. It just must have been kind of filed away and I almost forgot about it. But I've recently been moving some things around, thinning the herd somewhat in the record room, and I rediscovered this album and I thought, oh, I don't really remember this. I'm going to throw it on, and man alive, I completely fell in love with this record. It is so incredibly good, and I almost got mad at myself for not taking the time to really listen to it the first time. So the record in question is Anthology Resource Volume 2, Philosophy of Beyond by Dean Hurley. And for those of you that don't know, Dean Hurley collaborates with David Lynch a fair amount, and in fact Anthology Resource Volume 1, which is a digital only release as far as I know, is Dean's ambient score or ambient sounds for Twin Peaks The Return. So if you're a Twin Peaks fan, which I'm sure some of you out there are, I would head on over to Dean's Bandcamp and snag a copy of Anthology Resource Volume 1. But Anthology Resource Volume 2, Philosophy of Beyond. Now what's this? It's not a score, it's not a soundtrack, but it could live in that world because the music on here is aimed at taking a look at what's in front of you and piercing into the astral plane. It's a very trippy record. It feels like it takes you on a ride or on a journey when you listen to it. And I'm assuming that at the first time of me listening to this, I just wasn't ready. I just wasn't in the right frame of mind. But the other day I threw this on and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I hope there are more releases in the Anthology Resource series. And in fact, on the back of the record, there is a brief excerpt about what Anthology Resource is. And I'm just going to read you what it says because it ticks literally every box that I have. Anthology Resource is an ongoing compendium curated both for film and television in the library production music tradition. Each release organises themed atmospheric audio material, fully licensable, non-exclusive, and designed specifically for enhancement and accentuation of cinematic audio-visual productions. Amazing. I cannot say enough good things about this record, and I ordered this on Bandcamp, and at the time I didn't actually realise, but I pre-ordered the Bandcamp variant of the album, which comes on this really cool blue and gold Starburst, I guess this is blue and gold mix. But it's just, it's really cool. It's really nice. It's opaque, so it doesn't shine through, but it looks fantastic when it's on the turntable. And this, it sounds brilliant too, as well, considering it's a mix. You know, sometimes you can get mixed results, but this is, it sounds amazing. And it's one of those records that I wouldn't necessarily recommend listening to it late at night, but you know, if you're in one of those, I'm trying to fall asleep, but I can't fall asleep, my mind is whirring, throw this on and just see where it takes you. That's what I've done a couple of times, and I've had some really bizarre dreams. I'm not going to get into that now, but this has definitely gone into heavy rotation now. And probably will be there for a little while as well until I get too freaked out, or Doom releases Anthology Resource Volume 3, who knows. But I'm not sure if that version is still available on Bandcamp. If it's not though, it's still available through Sacred Bones. So if you like the sound of what I've said, check it out digitally first and head on over to Sacred Bones and grab yourself a copy. Up next, one of my favourite albums from the latter half of 2019, and this is I don't even know if you can class him as black metal anymore. I guess you could, it's black metal-ish, but this is the latest album from Alcest, Spiritual Instinct. I almost said something very different then. Spiritual Instinct. This is just, it's only 6 tracks, and you think 6 tracks, well that's not a lot. Trust me, if there were any more, it would spoil this album. This is sonic perfection, if ever there were such a thing. It's, as I mentioned before, I mean, Alcest does dabble in the black metal. It's very, very heavy, very intense, but so beautiful, so uplifting and magical, and just, it's something I would, if you are a fan of heavy music, definitely check it out. I would recommend it to everybody that listens to kind of heavy metal. But if you're not necessarily a heavy metal fan, but you do like orchestral music, or even anything that kind of, I don't want to say storytelling or prog, but I mean, there are so many elements going on that record that it's just, I say this a lot, I talk about this a lot with many records. In fact, I've even said it about records on this episode. There is a journey to be had while listening to this record. There truly, truly is. And I think I want to say, like, I started listening to Alcest, not at the start, I probably got into them maybe 2 or 3 albums ago. But since then, I've become such a staunch fan, and on the inside, you get this gorgeous insert with lyrics and some information about the band. I love the artwork on this. I truly, truly do. And the cover is just superb. There were a couple of different versions of this. I know there were some crazy limited editions. I just went for the regular retail version, which is 180 gram black vinyl. Looks good, sounds good, literally nothing else you could ask for. This is out now on Nuclear Blast, and as I say, it's heavy, but there's power behind, there's like true power behind it, and power in the sense of not beating you over the head with a hammer. No, this is like uplifting. Put this on, take a deep breath, sit down, close your eyes, and just let it go. It's definitely one of my favorite kind of heavy releases in probably the last 5 or 6 years. Definitely one of the highlights of my 2019. So Spiritual Instinct, if you haven't already checked it out, definitely check it out. Now, I have another cassette for you on this episode of The Record Room, and as I've mentioned in the past, not adverse to featuring cassettes. Cassettes were kind of my first, even though I started off with vinyl first, cassettes were my entry point into way more music, because I would trade kind of mixtapes with friends and family and things like that. So I've always had a big soft spot for cassettes, and the fact that so many people are now making cassettes makes me so happy. And this cassette I want to talk about here, this is the latest release from our good friends over at Spun Out of Control. And I've just realised, holding this in my hand, that almost every release on this episode is kind of, I talk about it taking you on a journey. So maybe I should retitle this the journey episode. But this will take you on a journey. It took me on a journey, and I'm not sure I want to take it again, to be perfectly honest, because it was terrifying. No, this is the score. Well, this is the cassette, the release for Death Ship 2047. And this is a reimagined score for the movie Event Horizon, which, if you've never seen it, it's absolutely terrifying. Just, yeah, it's terrifying. And the orbital score for the film is superb. Sadly, no longer available. Crying out for a reissue. I don't know why no one's done that one yet, because it's brilliant. But Death Ship 2047, as I mentioned, this is the latest release out now on Spun Out of Control. Artwork, as always, by our old chum Eric Adrian Lee. I'll just hold that up for the camera there so you can get a better look at it. And what's cool about this is the story behind the album. It's actually on the inside of the J card, so you can actually read Andy's thoughts and kind of get his take on why this came about. And I'm pretty sure this is sold out now at source, but there may be some copies at retailers. So if you want to check this out and you like what you hear, you want to grab yourself a physical copy. If you can't find one locally or any place you shop, hit up Spun online, because he'll be able to point you in the direction of someone that may still have them. But this, like most Spun releases these days, came out on 2 different variants, and I have the Blood Glitter, I believe is what this version is called. And this is essentially a clear shell with red glitter inside it, and it's really cool. Like, the glitter, it's actually inside the shell. It's not printed on the outside. The logo's printed on the outside, but the glitter's actually on the inside of the cassette shell, which it just looks badass. It really looks cool. The music, much like the film Event Horizon, is terrifying. It does take you on a journey, as I've mentioned before. If you like the darker side of electronics, I'd say this was even darker than the Dream Division Escape from Planet Sauvage. Definitely. It's not something I'm going to listen to every day, I will say that, but I've thrown this on a couple of times really early in the morning, and it's just been the right soundtrack. You know how sometimes an album will take on a kind of like a different life or a different listen, depending on when you listen to it, how you're feeling? Well, this one is a brilliant, very early morning listen for me. You know, nice strong cup of coffee, some Death Ship 2047, sitting in my record room. It's kind of dark outside still. That, my friends, is a perfect listen right there. But as per usual with everything Spun Out of Control do, he's constantly turning me on to new material, new artists, and I'm becoming a big fan of. I think this is the second or third release now that they've done with Andy, and it's another feather in the cap of Spun Out of Control. They really are the best at kind of these new electronic artist albums on cassette. I can't think of anyone else that's doing anything remotely similar and doing it to this high level. So as always, cap off to Spun Out of Control. If this is not available, Death Ship 2047, but you want to get yourself a real good immersive ambient dark electronic listen, head on over to their Bandcamp and you can stream it now digitally. Now we're almost at the end of another episode of The Record Room, so I'd like to take this time to say a big thank you to all of our patrons out there. And if you're watching this over on YouTube and you'd like to support the show, Patreon's the easiest way to do it. It's only $1 a month, and for that you get every episode up front, you get to take part in viewer polls, you get additional bonus content, plus you'll also receive a credit at the end of each episode. So for $1, I don't think that's too bad. And of course, if you'd like to follow us on social media, you can do at Record Room Show. We are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. If you've got any questions or you want to hit me up to something, that's the best way to reach out to me. Of course, if you're a patron though, you can just message me directly and I will get back to you as soon as possible. But my final pick of the episode is something I've kind of been waiting to talk about. I was going to talk about it on the last episode, but as we did a soundtrack special, I put it off until this one. But this is Metropolis, and this is a damn fine slab of mighty wax. This is the latest album from Broken Lamps, Mr. Eric Bauer, who is just one of the most talented chaps. I'm fortunate enough to say I know he is an exceptional musician. This is his third release. This is the second one on vinyl though. The previous album to this was Kaleidoscope, which the music that Eric's done so far, or Broken Lamps I should say, I think the first set was called Turn Signals. It's very Italian, giallo, thriller, inspired music. They're not scores, but they're definitely inspired, and there's a nod of the cap to that kind of material. And the first release, Turn Signals, was very much in that vein. Kaleidoscope kind of started to drift away from it a bit, but hadn't done completely. And I was a big fan of both releases. This one though is more of a departure. There is less of the, I'd say there's less of the Italian giallo feel and more of the Italo 60s pop. And there's some psych on here as well. And it just, I wasn't really sure what to expect when I got this. I was thinking, oh, you know, maybe there's going to be some more of the cool giallo stuff on there because, you know, I'm a fan of that. But I put this on and I was kind of like, man, this album swings. This album swings big time. And it's just for 12 tracks, it just packs a punch and just keeps on punching. I really can't say more than that. It's housed in this really super thick sleeve, and this is actually released in conjunction with our old friends Two-Headed Dog. So I'm predisposed to like this because I've got friends involved. However, if I wasn't a fan, I wouldn't be talking about it. I will say that to you. I'll always be honest with you about stuff. If I've worked on a record or I've got friends that have released a record but it's not very good, I'm not going to talk about it. I'm only going to talk about stuff that I would recommend to you if we were in a pub, in a bar, and we were chatting about music. And Metropolis is definitely something I'd recommend. If you are still a fan of kind of Italo pop, if you're more of a fan of, say, Italian giallo, I'd say you should definitely check this out. But if you're a fan of kind of 60s, not just Italian, but like 60s pop in general, really give this a look. Really give this a look. And this is available now over at Two-Headed Dog. Remember, if you use the code Record Room, you'll get 15% off your order at checkout. So you can grab this fine album and get yourself 15% off. And the version I have here, this is actually a special edition version. The record though comes on that lovely thick sleeve, really nice. And it comes on a big black shiny slab of 180 gram wax. And of course, look at this, it's just beautiful. I love this. It's so good and it sounds brilliant from the get-go. But what makes this version cool, what's special about this version, is the fact that it comes with a visual scrapbook. Now what this is essentially pictures or frames from the movies that inspired Eric's music on the new album. So each track on here will have a corresponding movie still or something like that. Like, for example, Escape from Butcher Beach. You can see there. And of course, there are Private Dreams. It's really cool to have this because listening to some of these tracks, I wouldn't necessarily have connected the dots, but after seeing the pictures in here, I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. I see where he went there. You can connect the dots, which for me is just like an added layer of what makes a record a really cool listening experience. And I don't know if this version with the visual scrapbook is still available, but hit up Ben over at Two-Headed Dog. He may have a copy or two lying around that you can get your hands on. Well, that's it, folks. We've come to the end of another episode of The Record Room, so thank you for joining me. As always, if you're watching on YouTube, why don't you go ahead and hit that red subscribe button. But until next time, stay gold, wash your hands, and always spin those blackest circles.